Hi, I want to make a quick video on threshold and pain and suffering and how much suffering each individual person can take, and how just because you can take something and another person can't doesn't mean that you're necessarily going through some more pain than the other person is, or you're not going through less pain, or whatever it may be. The real distinction I want to make is, say two people are going through the same pain, and a person reacts more and another person reacts less. You're not going through the same pain, and that's the point I want to make, is you're not going through the same pain just because just because it's the same thing. It's a matter of the reaction. Say all sorts of things can be all very bad, being stuck, being locked, psychological, physiological, emotional, whatever distinction you want to make with what kind of pain you can experience. It's all pain, and it's all physical. Based on this non-physical projection that we have, based on a physical process creating this ethereal thing that we call consciousness, which makes everything mean anything, as this feeling thing, an awareness thing, controlled by physical forces, giving meaning to these physical forces based on this almost in a way non-physical thing caused by a physical process, this non-physical projection caused by a physical process causing these things to happen. But it's obviously a physical process causing all this stuff to happen. So anyway, the point I want to make is you're not going through the same pain, even though it's the same thing happening to you. Just because the person reacting more obviously has a different threshold for pain, or at least a certain kind of suffering or pain. And another subject is masochism. Just because you like it doesn't mean it's pain. If you like it, or you like the build-up, like the burn of a workout, doesn't mean it's not. Doesn't mean, if that's the case, then it's not pain to you. It doesn't mean it's not pain, but it's not suffering to you. And find something that makes you suffer, and therefore you'll find something that makes you suffer. And like another point I make, if you're not suffering, or you're finding something to deprivate yourself of, and going around that circle where the deprivation is chasing you, and you're running away from something, and you're running after something, and the thing you're running after is the thing chasing you, and so on and so forth. If you have none of that, what are you playing the game for? There's nothing to have. It's about the chase. The chasing. It's about the chasing. It's about running away from something and chasing something at the same time. Having that urgency, that feeling of something, right? And being at the behest of being controlled by a mechanism, and being in pain, and recognizing the futile mechanism that's controlling the reality and how everything works perceptually. Recognizing that, not just recognizing it, but also knowing it, can also, knowing it can, perceptually recognizing it can also cause a lot of problems. So it's a matter of, when you know that and you're in pain, it makes you recognize just how futile this existence can be, and how bad it can be when you're stuck in something, dealing with some kind of bad thing, and then knowing that once you get out of that bad thing, it's just going to be right back to the other bad thing that you were dealing with. Not necessarily a chase game, but you avoid something to get to something even just as bad. You go away from one problem to come right back to another problem. And that's the game that we're playing. So yes, just because a person is experiencing something, it's the same thing, doesn't mean it's the same thing. The same, you're not feeling the same pain. The other person is feeling more pain. When they react more, they're feeling more pain. So we're like people with, predisposition towards not feeling this kind of pain or that kind of pain, whatever pain you want to use, sharp pain or dull pain, aching pain, whatever pain you want to use. This person can have a built-in threshold that they've had, and by that very nature. But sometimes a person builds up a threshold of pain. So obviously they had to go through the pain to begin with, to make it so they didn't experience it more, or that they can experience it more without feeling the pain as much. So that's a lot of the time where the threshold comes from, is from an innate, either from an innate ability to experience pain, or from a non-innate buildup of experiencing pain. So sometimes it takes some to get to where you are, but you beg the question, why do that when you didn't have to go there to begin with? Why have to go through it when you didn't have to go anywhere to begin with? So why not just have nothing to begin with, when all you're doing is just making up as best you can, not entirely, for something that you lost? Why not just stay at the very end, at the very zero, the very end? Why go back and forth to try your best to get right to here, or as close as you can to here in the living thing? Why go through all the problems in existence just to get back to your happiness, or death in another, within life, get to your happiest moment? Why go through the negative to get to the happiest moment? or just death? Why go through the process of life when you're just going to die again? Why go through this whole thing? Why have this process happening when you're just going to be back to the same thing that you were beforehand? Or and within life, why go through the pain just to get to the same happiness that you experienced after some great misery? Why go through that again just to get some satisfaction in the end that you have? Because you're always making up. You're not going to make it for the past. You keep on going in the future, and you're not compensating for anything in the past because the pain happened, and the pain is the thing that means something. So yeah. So everyone's going to have some pain that they don't want, and that's the very definition of pain, is not wanting it. And then that's the thing that's described, not pain, but suffering. You can find something painful, pleasurable, but that's not suffering then, because you're finding the buildup or some kind of thing in the future that you like about it. You're going through something and you're saying, okay, I like this, and you can grow a liking because you've experienced a lot of it, and you look forward to it now because it's something that you've learned to like based on the outcome that you've expected. So it's a matter of just back to the original example I was using with the experiencing threshold and things like that. So you're experiencing a different threshold. The person's feeling more pain, and sometimes that threshold is built out of having a lot of pain and going through it over and over again, through being callous, being hardened, and that's where a lot of this stuff comes from. And it obviously took a greater pain to get to the callousness, but obviously why go through that just to become more callous when you didn't have to go through the pain to begin with? Obviously, if there's limited choices, and we're at the control of the crude forces controlling us, so we obviously have to come to some end, and the end is we had to go through that to get used to it, even though getting used to it doesn't do anything to make up for the fact that you had to get used to it to begin with. And get used to it for what? For what end? To other than to die and go back to the zero sum. And within this life, we're not doing anything to get to the zero sum. It's once we live, the jump that matters, and the landing, the end that matters. The momentum, the momentum is in and of itself existent, regardless, because the momentum is you're within the momentum right now. So I might talk about that in another video, but the threshold thing is. The threshold thing is the person's experiencing more pain, and the pain that you experience doesn't. And just because a person kills themselves in reaction to something, and you find it very easy, it's the same thing, but the person's threshold is different. And just because you find it easy doesn't mean it's easy for them. Different people have different thresholds, and obviously your threshold can be built out of getting used to something, or an innate built-in ability to deal with some kind of pain more than another person in the same circumstance, or as similar as you can recreate a circumstance to experience something like that. Anyway. So yes. It depends on your threshold, not on the thing that you're experiencing. So if you're experiencing the same thing, the person that reacts more is experiencing more pain. It's a matter of their threshold. Some people can go through a stubbed toe and find more pain in that than, if they're being honest with themselves, they can find more pain in that than the person has pain in a car accident where they lose a limb or something. They get flung through and their alarm gets ripped off in the process of flying through their windshield. Or something like that. Different things, more extreme, more flesh lost, can be less painful to someone than a person stubbing their toe, and that's usually a more sensitive person can find. You're stuck when you're a sensitive person because you're stuck with the existence, because people don't like people coming to them for problems. And if you're dealing with problems all the time, and if you don't have the right people around you, you're stuck. You're stuck dealing with life and the emotional and the psychological and the physical burden that you have to deal with it. And if you're too much for anyone else to deal with, you're stuck. You're too sensitive. You might as well be dead. So people don't want to be around a sensitive person. It's too much for them. It's too much for them, even though they're not sensitive. Yeah. So if they're sensitive, they would understand it. If they're not sensitive, then why are they complaining that it bothers them? I thought they had thicker skin than that, but obviously it's more nuanced than that. It depends on the threshold, and more than anything. So that's all I wanted to say. You could go through the same thing, and it just depends on it. It goes back to the same example of, you like thing. If you like it, you find it pleasurable, even if it's painful, considering it's sharp to your senses. say like a sharp nail in your foot. If you find that pleasurable, just find something else. And if you can't find any pleasure, pain or pleasure, if you're not experiencing any pain, you're probably not experiencing any pleasure based on some kind of buildup that you have. If you're experiencing no pain, you're probably not experiencing much pleasure because you had to go through a buildup or something. Or if you're not experiencing any pain, you don't have the deprivation leading up to some kind of positive in the end anyway. So you're sort of stuck experiencing a lot of pain, and that goes back to the mechanism. Makes it mean anything, and if you don't have that meaning, then that is the very thing that makes life not worth living, what makes it not worth living. And that's coming through this deprivation and this pain and this suffering that we have to experience to have any real meaning to life. So, yeah, I think that's the only point I wanted to make. So thank you, and until next time, bye.